That happens. And that can that can kill you and your family, which might be in the car, and the other guy who's coming and hitting you. So those are examples from real life.
So where do you see battery diagnostics and battery health checks going in the future? Now, for example, here in the UK, we have what's called an MOT. So every year, a vehicle that is over 3 years of age has to go in for an evaluation, and they check tires and brakes and lights and things like that. Would you see a battery health diagnostic as being something that you would like to see included in an MOT, for example?
Absolutely. So I think it has to. I mean, the MOT is predominantly a safety check, and there are good reasons to perform those safety checks for combustion engine cars, but as well as for battery electric vehicles. I mean, you just need to be sure the battery is in good conditions. And as I told you before, we find these cars far too often, to be honest, that have a critically low state of health because they have a critically high, for example, cell voltage deviation. And at a certain point of time, that becomes a real risk. And I'm not only meaning, a thermal overrun and a huge fire, which we can see from time to time on YouTube, which, by the way, does happen. But we find cars, you go into a tunnel and the car just stops driving. It just stops driving because of a cell defect. Or we found cars that, you want to, because you want to overtake another car. So you move onto the lane of the, cars coming in your direction, you pull the throttle, nothing happens. That happens. And that can that can kill you and your family, which might be in the car, and the other guy who's coming and hitting you. So those are examples from real life. And I'm not saying that happens, 1 out of 100 cars. No, but it happens too often. And so I'm very, very convinced that a battery safety check has to go into that annual inspections. And by the way, we are already working on a major project with a German company, which is called, by the way, FSD, who are providing exactly the technology for the German annual inspection, and they're already investigating into that direction. And I think the European law makers are already discussing how to include battery safety checks into that annual inspection, which I think is a must. Yeah.
Now, I think at this point, it is, I use a posh word, it is behoven on me. It is something that I've got to do because obviously I've got listeners here who are considering going or buying a used electric vehicle, and they're going to hear you saying, well, hang on, there are cars that have battery problems and they could end up getting you killed when you're trying to overtake. And I think we need to make clear that, yes, that absolutely does happen, but that is an absolute exception.
Yes.
The general state of health of the vast majority of electric vehicle batteries is really, really good. They're not going to need replacing. And even if they do, they'll be within the general 100,000-mile warranty. So I don't want people to go away with the case of, oh, well, Mark has told me that these things are going to, once I've done a couple of thousand miles, I'm going to have battery problems. That's not what you're saying at all.
No. That was just answering your question on why there should be an investigation on or an annual battery check. Because even if it would happen once, we should avoid it. So you don't have to be afraid when you buy a new car that you get that type of car. That's very unlikely. What you should be afraid, though, is that you eventually overpay because, in every percentage in state of health results in reduced range. And you should just make sure that you get a fair deal. And you might say a car with an 80% state of health is fine for me because it just fits very well to my driving patterns. I don't need that range anyway. But you should get it for a fair price. And you should get it for a discount as compared to the same car with a 90% state of health. And that's actually our goal. Because, you typically, as a consumer, you say, okay, when a car gets to something like 70% state of health, it's kind of, I don't want to say it's not usable anymore. It is usable, but for most of the people, it might not be usable anymore. So you have something like a 30% range, from 100 down to 70%. And within this 30%, every percentage counts. And you should just know it. You should make an educated decision when you buy a used EV. That's all we want.